On the coldest night of December, Rose Whittaker opened her front door expecting silence. But instead she found Holly Rowan on her porch, cheeks flushed, hair dusted with snow, holding a sprig of mistletoe she wasn't brave enough to use. The first snowstorm of December arrived earlier than anyone in the little town of Winterberry had expected. By late afternoon the sky had turned the color of pewter, and soft white flakes drifted past the windows of the Old Pine Inn, the kind of place travelers found by accident and locals refused to give up. Inside, the inn smelled of cinnamon biscuits and burning pine logs. The lobby glowed with golden lamplight, and a tree, tall, imperfect, and decorated with mismatched ornaments donated by guests over the years, stood beside the front desk. Rose Calder, carrying 2 overstuffed bags and shaking snow from her coat, pushed through the heavy wooden door. She was 31, warm-eyed, quiet in a way that made people lean in without realizing it. After a year that had stretched her thin, she'd come to Winterberry hoping for silence, rest, and maybe, if the world was kind, some kind of reset. She did not expect someone to be humming behind the front desk. A soft, melodic voice floated out first. Then she saw her. Holly Bennett, the inn's winter season helper, looked up from untangling a string of lights. A curl of chestnut hair slipped from behind her ear, and her eyes, green as pine needles, brightened in surprise. "Oh. You must be Rose," Holly said, brushing glitter from her hands. "I wasn't sure you'd make it through the snow." Rose smiled gently, embarrassed by how quickly her pulse fluttered. "Storms slowed me down. I wasn't expecting all of this." She gestured to the warm lobby, the lights, the tree, the entire cocoon of holiday comfort. Holly grinned, the kind that made her whole face soften. "We overdo Christmas around here. It's the owner's fault. And mine. Mostly mine." Rose's smile deepened. "I think I like that." As Holly handed her the room key, a brass one with a tassel too big to be practical, their fingers brushed. A small thing, barely noticeable, but it sent heat up Rose's arm like a spark catching dry wood. Holly felt it too. Her breath hitched, only for a second. "Your room is at the top of the stairs," she said softly. "If you need anything at all, extra blankets, tea, company, just ask." Rose nodded, cheeks warming. "I will." She headed for the staircase, but halfway up she paused. Holly had gone back to the Christmas lights, humming again, the soft glow reflecting off her hair like firelight. Something about her, gentle, open-hearted, bright, felt like a promise tucked inside the winter air. Rose didn't know it yet, but this Christmas would change everything. The storm worsened overnight. By morning, the inn's windows were frosted over, and the world outside looked like it had been tucked beneath a white quilt. Rose woke to the muffled hush of snowfall, the sound of a town temporarily erased. Downstairs, someone was already moving around the lobby. Rose smelled something warm and citrusy drifting up the staircase. Orange vanilla scones? Fresh tea? She wrapped a knit cardigan around herself, padded down the stairs, and found Holly in the small kitchen behind the front desk. The woman was focused, her brow furrowed in determination as she attempted to hang a stubborn garland above the entryway. The garland was winning. Holly stretched on her toes, grunting softly as she tried to loop the evergreen rope onto a hook far above her reach. Rose couldn't help it, she laughed. Holly turned instantly, cheeks pink. "I swear it worked last year. Either the hook moved, or I shrank." Rose moved closer, gently taking the other end of the garland. "Let me help?" Holly hesitated. "Only if you're sure. Guests are not supposed to do manual labor." "It's Christmas," Rose said, lifting the garland easily. "Rules bend." They secured it together, hands brushing again, closer this time, lingering just a fraction longer. Holly stepped back to admire their work. Perfect. Then she added softly, we make a good team. Rose felt a warmth she hadn't felt in months. Yeah. We do. But before she could say anything else, there was a sudden pop. And the string of lights going across the lobby flickered violently before dying altogether. Oh no, Holly sighed. Great. First the garland, now the lights. Rose followed her gaze to the old fuse box tucked behind the tree. Want help? Holly bit her lip, considering. I would normally say no. But. She glanced at the snowfall outside, the deepening quiet. Today feels different. Together, they knelt by the fuse box. Rose held a flashlight while Holly examined the fuses, both of them close enough that Rose could smell Holly's shampoo, something soft, like rosemary and vanilla. It's not the fuse, Holly murmured. It's the wiring. These old things always give out during storms. Rose leaned in a little closer. Can you fix it? Probably. But I'll need to get into the crawlspace, and it's freezing in there. Rose tilted her head. Do you want company? She added quickly, just to hold the light. Holly's eyes lifted to hers, surprised, pleased, and something else that made Rose's breath catch. You do that? Yes, Rose said quietly. I don't mind the cold. Holly smiled, soft, grateful, intimate. Okay then. You can come. They were halfway through rewiring a stubborn section when the storm surged outside, rattling the windows. Holly shivered, rubbing her arms, teeth chattering. Without thinking, Rose shrugged off her cardigan and draped it around Holly's shoulders. Holly froze. Rose, you'll freeze. I'm fine, Rose said. You're the one crawling around in the cold. Holly looked at her in a way that could melt snow. For the first time, her voice lost its easy brightness. Instead, it was warm, fragile. Not many people think about me like that. Rose didn't look away. Maybe they should. The moment stretched, quiet, glowing, full of something neither could name yet. Then the light string above them suddenly flickered back to life, bathing the lobby in soft yellow warmth. Holly laughed in relief, and Rose couldn't help laughing too. You did it, Rose said. We did it, Holly corrected. Outside, the blizzard continued, but inside the old Pine Inn, something else had begun, gentle, warm, and impossibly hopeful. By late afternoon, the storm showed no sign of easing. Snow piled up against the doors, and the wind whistled through the chimney in low, mournful sighs. Rose watched it from the lobby window, wrapped now in a borrowed blanket Holly had insisted she take. Behind her, the soft clatter of cups came from the tiny kitchen. Holly emerged a moment later balancing a tray with 2 steaming mugs. Emergency snowstorm cocoa, she announced proudly. My specialty. Extra marshmallows. And a pinch of cinnamon because I'm reckless like that. Rose laughed, taking one of the mugs. Their fingers brushed again, this time deliberate, a little lingering. It smells amazing, Rose said. Holly sat across from her on the old brown leather sofa, tucking one leg beneath her, looking entirely too cozy and charming for Rose's heart to handle. The inn was warm, lit by the soft glow of string lights newly brought back to life. The tree twinkled. The fire crackled. And Holly's eyes, bright, soft, curious, kept drifting to Rose. It's been a while since we had a long-term guest, Holly said, blowing on her cocoa. Most people just stop here on their way somewhere else. I'm between places, Rose admitted. I thought Winterberry would be quiet enough to figure things out. Holly's eyebrows lifted gently. That sounds like you've had a rough year. Rose nodded, but didn't offer more, not yet. Instead she asked, and what about you? How did you end up at the old Pine Inn? Holly smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes entirely. My family lives about an hour south. I work here during the winter season. Helps the owner, keeps me busy. She hesitated. I like making things feel warm for people. It's silly, but I like when someone walks in from the cold and suddenly relaxes. Rose said softly, it's not silly. It's a gift. Holly's cheeks flushed, the pink blooming beautifully against her warm skin. You think so? I know so. A beat of quiet settled between them, comfortable, glowing, edged with something tender and new. Then Holly's gaze dropped to Rose's hands wrapped around the mug. You're still cold, she murmured. You're shaking. Rose hadn't even noticed until Holly pointed it out. Before she could protest, Holly scooted closer on the sofa and reached out gently, wrapping her warm hands around Rose's. Her touch was soft, careful, almost reverent. Rose's breath caught. Holly glanced up, eyes searching Rose's face. Better? Rose managed a whisper. Yes. They stayed like that, hands touching, warmth shared, neither pulling away, for a long, suspended moment that felt more intimate than a kiss. But then Holly's smile faltered, the slightest shadow crossing her expression. She withdrew her hands slowly, as if it pained her to do it. Sorry, Holly said quietly. Sometimes I forget other people might not like that. Rose blinked. Why wouldn't I? Holly bit her lip, eyes flickering downward. I've been told I'm too affectionate. People misread it. Or think I'm trying too hard. Or that I'm strange. Rose shook her head gently. I don't think you're strange. Holly's breath softened. No. Not at all. I think you're. The words hovered on Rose's tongue. Kind. And warm. And exactly what this place needs. Holly looked up, hopeful in a way that made Rose's chest ache. Rose, she said softly, almost shyly. I'm glad you came here. Rose swallowed. I'm glad you're here. Outside, the storm raged harder, rattling the windows like a reminder that the world beyond the inn was cold, sharp, and unforgiving. But inside, the air between Rose and Holly warmed, slow and steady, like a fire catching at last, flames finding each other. Then the power flickered. Just once. Just enough for Holly to glance at Rose with a small, nervous smile. If the lights go out again, she said, voice low, we'll figure it out together. And Rose realized she wanted that, wanted together, more than she expected. It happened just after twilight. A subtle dimming. A quiet hum fading into silence. And then the entire inn slipped into darkness. The only remaining light came from the flickering fireplace and the soft glow of snow reflection through the windows. The world outside was silver blue and blurred. Inside, everything felt smaller, closer, wrapped in a hush that made Rose's heart thrum in her ears. Holly let out a breathy laugh in the dark. Well, there it goes. Rose stood carefully, setting her mug on the coffee table. Do you have candles somewhere? Upstairs, Holly said. In the supply closet. But we're going to need to take it slow. Those stairs are like ancient relics. They creak in protest if you look at them too hard. Rose smiled. Lead the way. I'll follow. Holly grabbed a small emergency lantern from behind the desk, a dim one, barely enough to paint her face in a halo of golden light. It made her look softer, gentler, almost ethereal. The two of them climbed the narrow staircase together, the old beams groaning with each step. Somewhere beneath them, the storm battered the walls, but up here, it felt like they were climbing into a secret world. "Sorry about the creepiness," Holly whispered. "Power outages during snowstorms are kind of a Winterberry classic." "I don't mind," Rose murmured. "It's peaceful." Holly glanced at her over her shoulder. "Or cozy?" Her voice was teasing, but her cheeks flushed. Rose swallowed. "Maybe both." They reached the small supply closet at the end of the hall. When Holly swung the door open, it released the faint smell of peppermint-scented soaps and stored linens. "Candles are up high," she said, stepping inside. "I need the stool." She dragged out a tiny wooden step stool, wobbly, clearly older than both of them combined. Rose winced. "Are you sure that thing is safe?" "Nope," Holly said cheerfully. She climbed it anyway. Rose stood close behind on instinct, hands half raised to catch her if the worst happened. Holly reached up, fingers brushing the edge of a box. But the stool wobbled. Just slightly. Enough to make Holly gasp and reach backward for balance, straight into Rose. Rose caught her waist instinctively. Soft warmth. A small surprised sound from Holly. And suddenly they were very, very close in the dim glow of the lantern. "Sorry," Holly whispered, breath brushing Rose's cheek. "It's okay," Rose said, her hands still steadying her. "I've got you." Holly didn't step away right away. She stayed, for a heartbeat, then two, her hands lightly resting on Rose's shoulders, her breath uneven, her eyes searching Rose's face like she was trying to understand something she couldn't quite name yet. Then, gently, she stepped down from the stool, the candles forgotten for the moment. "Thank you," she murmured. "I don't mind," Rose murmured. "It's peaceful." Holly glanced at her over her shoulder. "Or cozy?" Her voice was teasing, but her cheeks flushed. Rose swallowed. "Maybe both." They reached the small supply closet at the end of the hall. When Holly swung the door open, it released the faint smell of peppermint-scented soaps and stored linens. "Candles are up high," she said, stepping inside. "I need the stool." She dragged out a tiny wooden step stool, wobbly, clearly older than both of them combined. Rose winced. "Are you sure that thing is safe?" "Nope," Holly said cheerfully. She climbed it anyway. Rose stood close behind on instinct, hands half raised to catch her if the worst happened. Holly reached up, fingers brushing the edge of a box. But the stool wobbled. Just slightly. Enough to make Holly gasp and reach backward for balance, straight into Rose. Rose caught her waist instinctively. Soft warmth. A small surprised sound from Holly. And suddenly they were very, very close in the dim glow of the lantern. "Sorry," Holly whispered, breath brushing Rose's cheek. "It's okay," Rose said, her hands still steadying her. "I've got you." Holly didn't step away right away. She stayed, for a heartbeat, then two, her hands lightly resting on Rose's shoulders, her breath uneven, her eyes searching Rose's face like she was trying to understand something she couldn't quite name yet. Then, gently, she stepped down from the stool, the candles forgotten for the moment. "Thank you," she murmured. Holly's inhale stuttered, like the confession landed deeper than she expected. The power stayed out. The wind howled. And between them, the slow burn warmth lit something neither of them could put out now. The power remained out well into the night. Most guests had already canceled their reservations because of the storm, leaving the inn silent except for the crackle of the fire and the steady heartbeat of the wind outside. Holly paced by the window, peeking through the frosted glass. "It stopped snowing," she murmured. The storm finally gave up. Rose approached her side. Outside, the world glowed still and white beneath a brilliant moon. Snow glittered across the rooftops like crushed crystal. It looked untouched, dreamlike. Holly turned to her with a soft, pleading smile. "Do you want to go outside for a minute? Just to see it? The inn feels too small all of a sudden." Rose nodded instantly. "I'd love to." Out in the snow. They bundled up in coats and scarves and stepped into the night. The cold rushed in like a living thing, stinging Rose's cheeks, but the beauty made her breath catch. Winterberry lay still, wrapped in snow so fresh it muffled every sound. The trees bowed under the weight of their icy blankets. The moonlight painted everything silver, as if the world belonged only to them. Holly walked ahead a few paces, her boots crunching through untouched powder. "This," she said softly, spinning once with arms spread, "is my favorite part of winter." Rose watched the spin, watched the way Holly's scarf floated, watched the joy that came unguarded across her face. She didn't say it, but this, Holly twirling in moonlit snow, might have become her favorite part too. They walked deeper into the quiet night, side by side, shoulders brushing every few steps. It was a gentle kind of closeness, natural, necessary. "Thank you for coming outside with me," Holly said. "Most people think I'm ridiculous for wanting to walk in the cold." "You're not ridiculous," Rose said. "You see beauty where others don't." Holly looked at her. Really looked. And Rose felt her heartbeat respond. The close call. They reached the small wooden bridge that crossed the frozen creek. Snow covered the boards, making them nearly invisible in the dim night. Holly stepped onto it first. And her foot slipped. Rose lunged without thinking, grabbing her waist and pulling her back before Holly could fall. They stumbled together, Rose's boots dragging through the snow until they landed against the railing, Holly pressed safely against her. Holly gasped, hand gripping Rose's coat. "Whoa, okay, that was close." Rose laughed breathlessly. "You scared me." Holly's voice softened, inches from Rose's face. "You caught me." They stayed like that. Held together, breath mingling in puffs of white in the cold air. Holly's mittened hands slowly, gently slid down Rose's sleeve until it found her bare wrist. The touch was small, nothing dramatic, but it was warm, intimate in a way that felt like the start of something fragile and beautiful. "You really scared me," Rose repeated, quieter this time. Holly pressed closer, her voice trembling a little. "Rose. I'm glad you're here. More than I should be. More than I expected." Rose swallowed, her heart tightening. "I'm glad I'm here too." The cold didn't matter. The snow didn't matter. What mattered was the way Holly leaned into her now, trusting her warmth more than the railing beneath them. Their first unspoken promise. They walked back slowly, the world around them changed but the real change happening quietly between them. Halfway to the inn, Holly stopped. She turned to Rose, fingers nervously twisting in her scarf. "Rose, can I ask something?" "Anything," Rose said. Holly's eyes softened, vulnerable and shining. "Please don't leave tomorrow." "Not yet. Even if the road's open." Rose's breath hitched. She hadn't made a single decision since arriving. But right now, one felt clear as snowlit glass. "I won't," she whispered. Holly exhaled, relief washing across her face. "Okay, good." They didn't kiss. Not yet. But as Holly slipped her hand into Rose's, small, brave, hopeful. They made their first promise in the cold night. They would stay in this moment together. And neither wanted it to end. The sun rose slowly over Winterberry, pale gold and gentle, turning the snow outside the inn into a field of shimmering light. Rose woke to the faint creak of footsteps in the hallway and the smell of something warm, freshly baked, sweet, familiar. For a moment she lay still, letting the soft memory of last night settle over her. Holly's hand in hers. The moonlit walk. The way Holly had whispered "don't leave yet" as if it mattered deeply. Rose dressed quietly and padded downstairs. The power was still out, but the inn was glowing with candles, little islands of flickering warmth. Holly stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a fuzzy white sweater, sleeves too long, hair pulled into a messy bun. A smudge of flour streaked her cheek. In her hands she held a tray of warm cinnamon rolls, their icing melting in the heat. When she saw Rose, her face broke into a smile that wasn't the bright, cheerful Holly smile she gave everyone. It was softer. Shyer. For Rose alone. "Good morning," Holly said, brushing a curl behind her ear. "I made breakfast. Power or no power, I refuse to let the morning win." Rose laughed, stepping closer. "Those smell incredible." "They should," Holly said. "I nearly burned my hand getting them out of the old gas oven. The inn tried to sabotage me, but I prevailed." Rose reached up and gently brushed the flour smudge from Holly's cheek. Holly froze, soft, breathless, eyes lifting to meet hers. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Holly whispered, "Thanks." Rose smiled. "Anytime." Breakfast by candlelight. They sat together at a small table near the window, the morning sun glowing across the snow outside. The cinnamon rolls steamed between them. Holly poured hot tea, her hands trembling just slightly, something Rose noticed, something that warmed her more than the drink. "So," Holly said as she buttered her roll, "you promised you'd stay another day." "I did." Holly looked down, smiling shyly. "Good. Because I didn't want yesterday to be the end." Rose rested her chin in her hand. "It didn't feel like an end." Holly let out a nervous breath. "Rose, I need to tell you something. And I'm not great at saying things directly, so forgive me if I ramble." Rose leaned closer. "Say whatever you want. I'll listen." Holly's fingers traced the rim of her mug. "I don't usually open up to people. I get nervous. People think I'm too much or too strange or too clingy when I care about someone." She swallowed. "But with you, I don't feel like I have to pretend anything." Rose's chest tightened. "Holly, I don't think you're too much. Or strange. I think you're..." Holly looked up quickly, eyes wide and searching. Rose finished softly. "Exactly right." Holly's breath caught. Her lips parted just slightly, not in surprise but in something deeper, something like relief. A soft confession. They sat for a moment, the room quiet except for the whisper of wind outside. Holly reached across the table, hesitating only a second before letting her fingers brush Rose's hand. "Can I be honest?" Holly murmured. Rose nodded. "Please. I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment you walked in." Holly's cheeks flushed, but she didn't pull away. "It felt like you brought warmth with you." Rose squeezed her hand gently. "I felt something too." Holly's voice trembled. "You did?" Rose nodded. "From the very beginning." Something flickered in Holly's expression, hope, fragile but shining. She let go only to stand and circle the table. Rose's heart stuttered as Holly paused beside her chair, suddenly shy, fingers twisting in the hem of her sweater. "May I?" Holly asked softly, gesturing to the space beside Rose. Rose shifted, opening the space for her. Please. Holly slid into the seat next to her, closer than they had ever been, warm thigh brushing warm thigh. Rose could feel her breath, her heartbeat, her nervous excitement filling the small space between them. Holly looked down at their hands resting side by side. Rose, she whispered, barely audible, I'm scared of feeling this fast. Rose slid her hand over Holly's. I am too. Holly exhaled shakily, relief and longing mingling. But I want to try. Rose tightened her fingers around Holly's. Me too. A moment just for them. They sat there in the candlelit breakfast room, hands entwined, shoulders touching, the quiet morning wrapping around them like a gentle promise. No kiss yet. No rush. Just closeness, warm, steady, growing stronger with every breath. And Rose knew. This wasn't a passing snowstorm moment. This was the beginning of something that wanted to stay. Holly leaned her head lightly against Rose's shoulder. Stay another day, she whispered. Rose pressed her cheek to Holly's hair. I'll stay as long as you want. And Holly, for the first time, whispered back. Good. Because I don't want this to end. Winterberry's annual Snowlight Festival was usually the busiest day of the season, but the storm had pushed everything back by one day. So when the power finally hummed back to life in the early afternoon, Holly nearly jumped out of her skin with excitement. She grabbed Rose's hands without thinking. It's happening. Holly laughed, eyes bright. The festival's happening tonight. Lights, stalls, music, everything. Rose smiled at her enthusiasm. I've never seen a Snowlight festival. Holly squeezed her hands. Then I'm taking you. No arguments. Rose didn't argue. She couldn't. Holly's joy was contagious, impossible to resist. Preparing for the night. As dusk approached, Holly appeared outside Rose's door wearing a deep green coat and a knitted hat with a ridiculous pom-pom. Her cheeks were already pink from the cold. You look beautiful, Rose said before she could stop herself. Holly froze, eyes widening, lips parting the slightest bit. Then she whispered, so do you. It wasn't a flirty line. It wasn't an automatic compliment. It was sincere, tender in a way that made Rose's knees go weak. The festival begins. They walked into town together, following the winding path lined with lanterns. Winterberry had come alive again, warm lights glowed from windows, the sound of laughter carried on the crisp air, and the smell of roasted chestnuts drifted from the village square. Children ran through the snow. Couples held hands. Musicians played soft holiday melodies on a small stage. Welcome to my favorite night of the year, Holly said softly. It's magical, Rose whispered. Holly smiled. It always feels like a storybook. But tonight? I don't know. She faltered, cheeks warming. Rose touched her arm gently. What? Holly looked at her, eyes shining. It feels different. Like. I'm not just watching the magic. I'm in it. Rose's heart thudded. She opened her mouth to speak, but Holly slipped her hand into Rose's and tugged her toward a row of booths, laughing nervously as if she'd surprised even herself with the boldness. Cider and shy smiles. They stopped at a wooden stall where a friendly older woman served them steaming spiced apple cider. Holly wrapped both hands around her cup, sipping cautiously. She murmured, eyes fluttering shut. Perfect. Rose watched her for a moment, transfixed by how Holly's joy shone through everything she did, how it warmed the coldest places around them. Holly opened her eyes and caught Rose looking. What? Holly asked, shy smile curling. Nothing, Rose said softly. Just glad I'm here. With you. Holly's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Rose, she whispered, voice trembling like she was balancing on the edge of something delicate. You keep saying things that make my heart do strange things. Rose stepped closer. Good things? Holly nodded slowly. Yes. Scary good. Under the snowlights. At the center of the square stood the town's snowlight tree, a towering spruce draped with hundreds of tiny white lights. The branches shimmered like stars had fallen into the boughs. The crowd gathered for the nightly lighting. A hush settled, children huddled together, parents held their breath. Holly tugged Rose closer to the tree. I always stand right here, she whispered. Why here? Because, Holly hesitated, cheeks warming in the glow of the lanterns. Because this is where I make wishes. Rose blinked. What do you wish for? Holly looked at her, really looked. Something real. Rose opened her mouth. And in that instant, the lights on the tree burst to life. The entire square glowed. People gasped, children squealed, snowflakes glittered like falling sparks. But Holly didn't look at the tree. She looked at Rose. Rose felt her breath skip as Holly's hand found hers again, warm and trembling. Rose, Holly whispered, her voice soft as snowfall, can I tell you something? Of course, Rose said. Holly stepped closer, until their faces were only inches apart. I like you, she breathed. More than I should in such a short time. And I've been trying to pretend it's just holiday magic or loneliness or whatever, but it's not. Rose's chest tightened, warmth flooding her. Holly. Holly shook her head gently, eyes bright and vulnerable. You don't have to say anything. Just, don't lie. Rose cupped Holly's cheek, thumb brushing her warm skin. I'm not lying, she whispered. I like you too. More than makes sense. More than I expected. More than I want to admit. Holly exhaled shakily. Good. Because I don't want to pretend anymore. Rose smiled, her forehead gently touching Holly's. Neither do I. The tree glowed behind them. Music swelled through the square. Snow floated softly around them, lighting in the lantern glow. Holly closed her eyes. Rose's breath mingled with hers. And though they didn't kiss, not yet. They stood there holding each other in a way that said everything. This is happening. This is real. This is ours. Snow came softly that night, the kind that didn't fall so much as drift, floating sideways in the glow of the street lamps. Rose and Holly walked home from the town square shoulder to shoulder, still warmed from the carols, the cider, and the laughter they'd shared under the big spruce. Neither spoke for a while. Their boots crunched in unison, slow and gentle, as if they didn't want the evening to end. Holly finally broke the silence. Do you ever feel, she murmured, breath turning to mist, like some moments are trying to tell you something? Rose glanced at her. Tell you what? Holly hesitated, eyes on the sparkly white road. That maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The words landed in Rose like a soft snowfall, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Her heart beat a little too quickly beneath her coat. She didn't answer right away, because she wasn't sure her voice would come out steady. They reached Rose's porch. Holly stopped at the steps, brushing snow from her hair. Thank you for tonight. It was more perfect than I expected. Rose smiled, shy but full. Because of the cider? Holly laughed softly. Because of the company. For a moment, neither moved. Snow collected on their shoulders, on the railing, on the little wreath on Rose's door. The night felt suspended, holding its breath for them. Holly lifted a hand and gently brushed a stray flake from Rose's cheek. Her fingertips were warm. Rose's pulse jumped. She whispered, "Holly." But Holly dropped her hand, stepping back with a soft, nervous inhale. "Good night, Rose." Rose could only manage, "Good night," as Holly turned, walking back down the snowy road, her figure slowly swallowed by the halo of the street lamp. Rose stayed on the porch long after she was gone, her cheeks still tingling, her breath uneven, wondering if Christmas magic was real after all, and if it had just begun. The next morning, Rose woke with that strange, fluttery feeling she'd tried to ignore all night. She made coffee, stared out the frosted kitchen window, and replayed Holly's fingertips brushing her cheek again and again. She'd known Holly for only a handful of days. So why did it feel like her presence had woven itself into the house already, like warmth lingering in a room after someone leaves? Rose shook her head and whispered into her mug, "Get a grip." But she smiled anyway. A knock at the door. Around noon, soft footsteps sounded on her porch. Before Rose even reached the door, she knew who it was. Something inside her recognized the rhythm of Holly's knock, 3 taps, hesitant, like a question. Rose opened the door. Holly stood there in a burgundy coat, cheeks pink from the cold, a bakery box in her hands. "Peace offering," she said sheepishly. "Cinnamon rolls. I woke up and realized I might have made last night weird." Rose blinked. "Weird?" Holly's eyes flickered away. "I touched your face." Which was, maybe impulsive. Rose felt herself warm from the inside out. "It wasn't weird," she said softly. "It was nice." Holly looked up at her, relief flickering like candlelight. "Oh. Good. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about it." Rose felt her pulse skip. "Me either." Inside, warmth blossoms. They moved into the kitchen, setting down the box. Rose made coffee, Holly sat at the counter, hands wrapped around a mug as if calming herself. "So," Holly began, "I thought maybe we could spend the afternoon together. The festival opens its Christmas market today. You want to go with me?" Rose asked, surprised. "I want to go only with you," Holly corrected, then blushed immediately. "I mean, only if you want." Rose didn't look away as she said, gently and truthfully, "I want." Something soft settled between them, trust, tentative but real. The almost confession. As they bundled up to leave, Holly paused by the door, her mittened hand hovering near Rose's. "Can I ask something?" Holly's voice was quiet. "Anything." Holly's breath wavered. "Does this, whatever this is, feel like something to you, too?" Rose felt the world slow around her. She didn't grab Holly's hand, but she let their shoulders brush as she whispered, "Yes. It does." Holly's smile bloomed, small but luminous. "Good. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining it." "You're not," Rose said. "Not even a little." They stepped out into the cold December air together, walking side by side toward the Christmas market, closer than they'd ever dared walk before. Something had shifted. And both of them felt it. The Christmas market bloomed across the town square like a patchwork quilt, reds and golds, pine garlands, twinkling fairy lights. Stalls selling everything from knitted scarves to carved ornaments lined the cobblestone path. Rose and Holly walked through it slowly, side by side, their arms brushing often enough to make Rose wonder if Holly was doing it on purpose. She hoped so. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and pine. Somewhere nearby, a violinist played a soft carol that drifted through the cold like warm breath. A handmade ornament. Holly tugged Rose gently toward a tiny stall displaying delicate glass ornaments. She held one up, a blown glass snowflake that shimmered pale blue in the winter light. "This reminds me of you," Holly said before she could stop herself. Rose blinked. "Because I'm cold?" Holly laughed, flustered. "No. Because you're quiet. And kind of intricate. Easy to overlook until you're really paying attention." Rose's heart curled in on itself like a warming leaf. "You pay attention?" Holly's cheeks flushed. "More than I should." They stared at each other for a long moment. The vendor pretended not to notice the blossoming tension. "Let me buy it for you," Holly said softly. "You don't have to." "I want to." Cider and confessions. They found a bench near the fountain, 2 steaming cups of mulled apple cider between them. The world bustled cozily around them, children laughing, bells ringing, snow drifting like confetti. Holly pulled her knees slightly toward Rose, closing the space. "I've been thinking," Holly said, gaze fixed on her cup. "About the day I arrived. I didn't expect to meet anyone here, let alone." She inhaled, steadying herself. "Let alone feel this drawn to someone." Rose's breath caught. "You're drawn to me?" "I think it started the moment you handed me that first cup of cocoa," Holly said with a tiny smile. "And it keeps getting worse." Rose's pulse fluttered wildly. "I'm glad," she whispered. Holly's eyes flicked up, soft and searching. "You are?" "Very." For a moment, the world felt quiet, like the hush before snowfall. The glove moment. Without thinking, Rose rubbed her hands together for warmth. Holly noticed instantly. "Your hands are freezing," Holly murmured. Before Rose could protest, Holly took one of her hands and slipped it into her own glove with hers, 2 hands sharing warmth inside a single soft pocket of wool. Rose swore she forgot how to breathe. Holly whispered, "Better?" Rose nodded, unable to form words. And for a while, they just sat there in the middle of the bustling market, sharing a glove, sharing warmth, sharing silence, closer than they'd been yet. The snowfall promise. As they walked back toward Rose's home, still tethered by their shared glove, Holly said quietly, "Can I see you again tomorrow?" Rose smiled. "You can see me every day if you want." Holly's answering smile was brighter than the lights strung above them. Snow thickened as dusk settled, gathering on rooftops and frosting the world in silver. Rose and Holly walked home slowly, the kind of slow that had nothing to do with tired legs and everything to do with not wanting the day to end. By the time they reached Rose's porch, the sky was the color of lavender dusk, and the snowflakes drifted so quietly it felt as if the whole world were listening in. Holly lingered on the first step, brushing snow from her coat. Rose waited at the door, watching her, heart thudding softly under her sweater. "Today was," Holly began. Rose finished for her. "Perfect." Holly smiled. "Exactly." Inside, the world grows smaller. Rose invited her in, lighting a few candles on the mantel. The house glowed warm and golden, smelling faintly of pine and cinnamon. Holly stepped closer to the living room window, watching the snow swirl outside. "It's like the world is wrapped in quiet," Holly said softly. Rose stood beside her. "It feels like a moment waiting for something." Holly turned toward her. "Yeah," she whispered. "It does." A soft, shy nearness. They sat on the sofa, close enough that Rose could feel Holly's warmth along her side. A Christmas movie played quietly in the background, but neither was paying attention. Holly kept glancing at Rose, her eyes lingering a little too long, her breath catching sometimes on nothing. At one point, their knees brushed. Holly didn't move away. Rose didn't either. "Rose," Holly murmured, voice hushed. Rose felt her pulse leap. "Yes?" "I'm trying not to rush things," Holly admitted. "I don't want to make the wrong move. But being near you feels so easy." "Right. I don't want to mess it up." Rose's heart softened, almost aching. "You're not messing anything up." Holly's shoulders eased. "Good. Because all day, all I've wanted is to..." She trailed off. "To what?" Rose whispered. Holly shook her head, smiling shyly. "You'll think I'm ridiculous." "I won't." Holly inhaled softly, lifting her head. "I've wanted to hold your hand again." Rose's breath stilled. "Then hold it." Holly blinked. "Really?" Rose offered her hand, palm up and open. Holly slid her fingers into Rose's slowly, tenderly, like she was unwrapping something precious. Their hands fit together perfectly, warming instantly. "Oh," Holly breathed, almost a sigh. "That feels better than I imagined." Rose squeezed gently. "Me too." A moment that almost happens. They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand, the flicker of candlelight painting their faces gold. Outside, snow cushioned the world in silence. Inside, warmth gathered between them like a secret. Holly looked at Rose's lips for just a second too long. Rose saw it. Felt it. Rose's breath caught. The air shifted. Holly leaned in, just a little. Not enough to kiss her, but enough that Rose felt her breath, soft and warm against her cheek. Rose's heart raced. Holly's fingers tightened around hers. Then Holly whispered, a tremble in her voice. "I'm not ready." "Not yet. But I'm getting closer." Rose smiled, touched her forehead gently to Holly's. "Take your time," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Holly exhaled shakily, relieved and warmed. "Thank you." They stayed like that, foreheads touching, hands entwined, until the snow outside stopped and the candles burned low. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was the moment right before one, the breath, the promise, the slow burn spark about to turn into something bright. Rose woke to a pale, wintry light and a warmth in her chest she couldn't shake. Last night replayed in her mind in soft, glowing fragments. Holly's fingers intertwined with hers. Holly's breath brushing her cheek. Their foreheads touching, quietly, tenderly. The whispered truth, "I'm getting closer." Rose pressed a hand over her heart. Closer was enough. Closer was everything. A knock wrapped in nerves. Around mid-morning, a gentle knock sounded at the door, 3 soft taps, just like always. Rose smiled before she even opened it. Holly stood on the porch, wrapped in a long scarf and holding something behind her back. Her cheeks were pink from the cold and from something else. "Hi," Holly said, a little breathless. "I, brought you something." Rose stepped aside to let her in. "Come warm up." Holly shook her head. "Actually, can you come outside for a sec?" Rose blinked but followed her out into the gentle morning snow. The smallest, sweetest gesture. Holly finally revealed what she'd been hiding, a small sprig of mistletoe tied with red ribbon. Rose froze. Holly held it between them, eyes soft and shy. "I know I said I wasn't ready," she whispered. "Anne. I'm still figuring things out. But I thought maybe we could make a promise under this." Rose's heart melted almost painfully. A promise? Holly nodded, voice barely above the snow's hush. That when I am ready, when the moment feels right, the first kiss will happen under this. Rose looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something tender rise in her chest like warm light. That's beautiful, Rose said gently. And yes. I promise. Holly's shoulders relaxed with visible relief. She stepped closer, so close Rose felt the heat of her breath in the cold morning air, and held the mistletoe above them both. No kiss, Holly murmured, just the promise of one. Rose nodded, her voice warm and steady. Whenever you're ready. For a second, Holly closed her eyes, leaning in as if gravity pulled her toward Rose, then stopped, a soft inhale catching in her chest. But she didn't step away. She stayed close, so close Rose felt her heartbeat through the cold. A hug that says everything. After a moment, Holly lowered the mistletoe and whispered, "Can I hug you?" Rose didn't answer. She just opened her arms. Holly stepped into them, folding herself against Rose's chest, arms sliding around her waist as if she'd been waiting to do it for days. Rose held her tightly, chin resting in Holly's hair, breathing in the faint scent of pine and vanilla. Holly whispered into her shoulder, "I feel safe with you. That's why I'm scared. But it's also why I want this." Rose closed her eyes, heart full. "I'll wait for you. As long as you need." Holly hugged her tighter. A new kind of beginning. When they finally separated, Holly's eyes were bright, not sad, just soft. Open. "I was going to ask," she said, "if you want to spend the evening at my cabin tonight. I'll cook dinner. Or at least attempt to," she laughed nervously. "You might need to rescue me from the smoke alarm." Rose grinned. "I'd love to." "Good," Holly said, looking relieved and pleased all at once. "I just want more time with you. The kind where nothing rushes and nothing expects." Rose touched Holly's gloved hand gently. "Me too." Holly threaded their fingers together, slowly, purposefully. And they walked down the snowy road, hand in hand, into a day that was bright and quiet and full of possibility. Holly's cabin glowed like a lantern in the snow, warm yellow light spilling onto the white drifts. Inside, the smell of rosemary and butter filled the air, not smoke, thankfully, and candles flickered along the windowsills. Rose slipped off her coat and boots as Holly nervously stirred something on the stove. "I was afraid I'd burn everything," Holly laughed softly. "You didn't," Rose said. "It smells wonderful." They sat down together at the little wooden table, sharing roasted vegetables, baked salmon, warm bread, and too much laughter. Holly wasn't afraid to meet Rose's eyes anymore. She held her gaze, shy but steady, as if she was learning bravery in small increments. After dinner, they curled up on the sofa under a fleece blanket, watching the fire crackle. The air between them felt warm and familiar, no longer heavy with nerves, but with a quiet, growing certainty. Holly leaned her head gently on Rose's shoulder. Rose didn't move. She just breathed, letting the weight of Holly's warmth settle into her. "Do you know what I realized today?" Holly whispered. "What?" "That this is the calmest I've felt in a very long time." Her fingers brushed lightly against Rose's. "And that it has everything to do with you." Rose turned her head, pressing a soft kiss to Holly's hair, not a lips-to-lips kiss, not yet, but something sweet and honest. Holly inhaled shakily. "I think I'm almost ready." Rose held her a little tighter. "Whenever you are. No pressure." Holly smiled into her sweater. "I know." Snow tapped gently against the window. The fire popped softly. Their hands found each other under the blanket, fingers tangling lazily. It was slow. It was warm. It was theirs. One last moment. Before Rose left that night, Holly walked her to the door, holding the little sprig of mistletoe between them. Just to check, Holly whispered, "The promise still stands?" "Always," Rose said. Holly exhaled, relief and anticipation softening her whole face. She lifted the mistletoe. Not for a kiss. Not yet. But for a smile full of trust, hope, and something sweet blooming. "Good night, Rose." Rose cupped Holly's cheek gently, letting her thumb linger. "Good night, Holly." The ending that feels like a beginning. As Rose walked down the snowy path toward her home, she looked back once. Holly was still there in the doorway, wrapped in warm light, watching her with soft eyes, and the mistletoe held like a promise. A promise that when the moment came, it would be worth every slow, tender step they'd taken to get there. Christmas would come again soon enough. And with it, the kiss they were both moving toward, quietly, beautifully, inevitably. For now, the slow burn glow was enough. More than enough. The fire crackled. The snow fell softly. Rose and Holly's hands were intertwined under the blanket, hearts quietly aligned. Christmas magic hadn't given them a fairy tale ending, it had given them something better, each other.